is Dhruva Jaishankar, Executive Director of ORF America. He's joining me from New York. Mr. Jaishankar, I appreciate your time here on NDTV. Several foreign policy experts are of the opinion that Prime Minister Narendra Modi's 3-day trip to the United States was more than just a diplomatic engagement. It shows how India is becoming central in global affairs. As a strategic analyst, how do you see Prime Minister Modi's US visit?
Well, I think this visit, it was a very busy visit. It was the last opportunity for the Prime Minister to come before November's US elections. And I think it highlighted, just in less than 3 days, 3 full days, I think highlighted 3 big issues. One was the Quad itself, and this was really a signature a policy, signature initiative of the Joe Biden administration, and sort of really consolidating that relationship. Second was on the bilateral relationship, including meetings with diaspora and US technology. And third, this is about the UN as well. And this was a major UN summit that is still ongoing, actually, in New York right now. And so I think that in some ways, there were 3 sort of broad objectives of the Prime Minister coming to the US this time.
Yes, absolutely. Mr. Jaishankar, of course, it was quite an eventful trip with Quad, bilaterals, the Summit of the Future address, and also that meeting which he had with several world leaders, Zelensky on one hand, and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas as well. Do you see these engagements and happening in US of greater significance of reinforcing India's stature on the global stage?
I mean, the UN General Assembly is often a very good opportunity for Indian leaders when they come to meet with a very wide range of their counterparts from many different countries. And so, they try, scheduling is often an issue, but they try and squeeze as many bilateral meetings as possible. To some extent, it also is an indicative of priorities. And you saw that in some, who the Prime Minister took time to meet, including President Zelensky in Ukraine, given the gravity of the situation there. Also, Mahmoud Abbas, of course, given what is happening in Gaza and Lebanon now, especially. So I think that is an indication of the seriousness of those, the immediate seriousness of those crises that are ongoing. But also, meeting counterparts from other developing countries and the developed world as well. And many bilateral meetings, even though the Prime Minister's left, many bilateral meetings are ongoing over the next few days as well.
I'm going to shift your focus now to the US elections. The US elections, of course, many say have entered a very decisive stage. What do you think will decide the battle between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris from here onwards in the next 2 months?
So the polls are still showing a relatively tight race. Kamala Harris seems to have a little bit more momentum, but the polls are still very close. And really only 7 states will decide the outcome of this election, the so-called swing states, of whom really it'll hinge on 2 or 3 decisive outcomes, including what might be very small margins. As of now, it's still, again, very, very close. Vice President Harris has a lead in a few of those states, including Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania very narrowly, and is gaining ground in some of the others. But former President Trump holds a strong hand and has remained quite resilient in polls. So effectively, the outcome is close to 50-50 at this point of time. Of course, things can change. There's a vice presidential debate that will take place on Tuesday, and that may shift the needle a little bit. There may be other engagements over in October. But ultimately, it looks like, it'll hinge on a few things. I think for the Democrats, it really is on voter turnout and enthusiasm, particularly in urban areas where they tend to do well. And that, I think, will be, really a key for the Democrats to try and get out that vote. And they've been raising a lot of money that will help them in that campaign. For the Republicans, I think it is highlighting dissatisfaction with the status quo, particularly economic issues. And we saw, again, former President Trump give a speech to that effect very recently as well.
Can we really, point at any dominant narrative or single thread running through this election?
I think Trump is still very successful at highlighting dissatisfaction with the establishment. And there still is a strong sense of that, and he's again been very successful in tapping into that sense of resentment, particularly people who there is a widespread sense that elites in the U.S. Of both parties have pursued policies that over the long term have disadvantaged very large numbers of people, whether it's on migration. Now, sometimes again, this takes a very slightly ugly turn. But the terms of essentially it's about resetting the terms of globalization, and I think that is really the signature struggle, not just of this election, but in some ways the last two elections, the previous two U.S. presidential elections as well.
And talking about the India-U.S. ties, will it be focused more on continuity? Because if it is Kamala Harris, if it were Kamala Harris, then what we have seen, she is the vice president. Or are you of the opinion that if it's the other way, Donald Trump taking the chair, it could be a different story altogether?
So, India does not, largely a good thing, India has not featured very prominently in this US election campaign. It is not an immediate crisis for either US president. There are no strong negative feelings associated with India, nor is it really a conventional ally, and some questions about particularly NATO allies and the ability of to step up in the war in Ukraine. That has become a bit of an election issue. So broadly, again, I would expect that we'd see a strengthening of relations under both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. There would obviously be different emphases that they would have. I think Kamala Harris, again, will have to renegotiate on certain issues within her own party in a way that, in terms of what issues to prioritize, in a way that Biden came in not having to do as much. For the Republicans, I think the two issues I would highlight where there may be significant departures and which would affect India would be on trade and on immigration issues. And I think he's been quite clear as to what his policies are going to be, and it will affect, at least to some degree, the bilateral relationship with India. Okay,
my last couple of questions. Since in this power play or setting of narratives which are playing out, do you think the fence sitters become very crucial in the next few weeks?
I'm sorry, the fence sitters in the U.S. elections?
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. So they're referred to as undecided voters.
And is there a high percentage of fence sitters?
No, so by and large, most people have made up their minds. I think there's perhaps only, the polls again suggest less than 10% of people still have to make up their minds about who to vote. They're being highly sought after. But again, I think a larger issue will be both the Republicans and Democrats have very strong bases. Will they be able to get it'll be about voter turnout. Will they be able to get that base to come out and vote in sufficient numbers? And I think the concern the Democrats had when Biden was still the candidate was that enthusiasm seemed to be waning in part because of concerns about Biden's age and capabilities. That seems to have changed again with Harris now coming out, and that again suggests that the momentum is on her side. But there are very few undecided voters. I suspect this will be much more about mobilization on voting day and before that.
Is the identity, also the gender identity of Kamala Harris an advantage for her? Is that making the people in general and women in particular perhaps generating that desire for history making, that there could be a history in the works if she takes that office?
So I've not seen polling data to back this up, but it seems that the historic nature of that is, even though it should be there because the U.S. has not had a female president, seems to be less of an issue than, say, in 2016 when Hillary Clinton was the candidate, the Democratic candidate for president, where that was very much highlighted. It has played out in some other ways. For example, Trump has watered down some of his, at least publicly, some more hardline positions on abortion, which has been abortion rights, reproductive rights, which have been a big issue for women voters, and which it seems he is worried that will alienate some voters. So there has been a little bit of a watering down in response to that. At the same time, there are polls that suggest that, surveys that suggest that Kamala Harris isn't doing too well with African-American male voters. So again, it's cutting both ways. Gender is certainly an issue in this election, but perhaps not as much as it was 8 years ago.
All right, Dhruva Jaishankar there sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much for speaking to NDTV.
Thank you.